Let it all out, no one is judging. Hello to all the meeps and bubbles and welcome back. In the last episode we built this petroleum boiler right here. Today I want to make a multiple planet spanning interconnected system that creates power and water and is feeding it back to itself. A little bit like this geyser system is creating its own power. So I want to start off with all of our oil reservoirs and giving them an oil well. Just like this, built from any metal that you have left over. Oh yeah, and if you're wondering where all this mess comes from, this is the water from the metal refinery bug that I enclosed in this little room here. Now that we have all the oil wells on the oil reservoirs, I can tell you how to get 10,000 watts of power out of the petroleum from our boiler in a self-cooled, basically self-sustained system, which even produces a little bit of excess water. And what we need for that is 5 petroleum generators. Each petroleum generator can take in 2 kilograms petroleum per second and produces 750 grams a second of polluted water. We also have carbon dioxide as a byproduct. So in combination with an oil well that only needs 1 kilogram of pure water to produce 3,333 grams a second of crude oil and a little bit of help from our petroleum boiler, which can convert crude oil in a ratio of 1:1 to petroleum, the math allows us to create a closed loop if we sieve the polluted water into clean water. Admitting that we still need a little bit of heat from our hot stones. With that knowledge in the back of our minds, we can connect up the output from the second planetoid, which delivers our crude oil, directly into the input pipe for the petroleum boiler. Let me quickly check again if this is the correct pipe. Yes, it is. So we can connect this up like this. And we also don't want to split it off into the infinite storage. On the second planetoid, we now have to build something that captures the crude oil and sends it back to the first planet. For that, a simple heat-resistant steel pump and a hydro sensor connected to it in a tiny room with the oil well should do the trick. I'm going to set the hydro sensor to above 100 kilogram. And since we do need at least 3 of them and only have 2 at the moment, another one here will help us out. We need 2 pipes for each of the oil wells, one for the water that is needed by the oil well and a second one for the crude oil that is output. I am planning to buffer and store both of those liquids with the help of a lot of liquid reservoirs. Since I deconstructed the old production area and we are running low on steel again, more kilns for refined carbon production are needed. After that we can start with our 10 kilowatt power system on the first planetoid on the right exploit side. I'm starting off with 5 petroleum generators made from gold amalgam, which in hindsight was a bad idea, because I could have just listened to my own short video, which tells us that this is only a good idea for petroleum up to 95 degrees Celsius. Leaving that aside, I'm adding the mesh tiles, which allow us to drop the polluted water that comes out of each of the petroleum generators. And in order for it to not be lost into space, we need to add some drywall on the first layer behind the petroleum generators. Add a ladder so the duplicants can reach this easier and build it. We can replace the side tiles that hold the liquid in place with joint plates, so everything is in line to be hooked up with heavy watt wire and can then be connected to the grid. A long time later, after the duplicants finally have finished this, we can add in the radiant liquid pipes. Those are important for the cooling of the petroleum generators, so I want them to cover every bottom tile. The fresh petroleum that will cool the generators will come from these bridges to the right. In a vacuum of space, you don't need insulated pipes, so you can save on material that way. But in order to avoid this hot area in the middle, I'm routing our pipe system through the insulation walls, carefully jumping over the heated metal tile. And because this was quite the drag, why don't we savor the next time lapse? Hey, future me! Could you do the music thing? Okay, nice. Okay, here we are back again. Of course we need to catch all of this polluted water. For that I'm using a pump made of steel connected to a hydro sensor. Meaning that we should be done up here and can connect up all of our pipes. This will fill our petroleum generators with our already stored petroleum, which in itself gets refilled by our petroleum boiler that gets its crude oil from the second planetoid. Let's ignore this water here for a second. The crude oil comes right here from this teleporter. So how do I want to get rid of this water? Maybe I just dump it and mop it up later, but make the pipes out of insulation. And it is not just the crude oil from the second planetoid, from the different oil wells that is important, but also the water that they need and that we accordingly have to send over from the first planetoid. Meaning that the teleporter unit on the first planetoid needs to be fed by the polluted output water from the petroleum generators, which according to this piping works out. The only thing that I apparently have forgotten is set this hydro sensor to above 500 kilograms. As soon as this activates, it will send over polluted water to the second planetoid, where it will combine with the clean water from our Spacefarer module Exploit and then temporarily stored in these liquid reservoirs. Ignore this mechanical liquid filter for now because I placed it in the wrong space. The idea behind it is be super sure that no liquid that doesn't belong in our pipes is in there. Now that we can be sure that we only have clean water, we can supply all of our oil wells with it, whereas the crude oil is being delivered to these lower liquid storages. But only after having the liquid purity controlled by this mechanical filter here, meaning the piping is slightly wrong at the moment and I have to reroute it a little bit for it to work perfectly. The crude oil will be teleported to the first planetoid, arrive at the teleporter, be sent up to the petroleum boiler, snake its way to the heating chamber, later be turned into petroleum, which then can be used by the petroleum generators, if they wouldn't have burned down already. Two reasons for that: we didn't have enough petroleum coming in to cool down our generators, and second, the petroleum was too hot to cool them down if they're made out of gold amalgam, so now I'm going to make them out of steel. Now let's follow the polluted water like we talked about, which sadly is at 103 degrees Celsius at the moment, which is being sent down and teleported to the second planetoid, where it merges with different water sources in the water sieve. After being cleaned or thrown out of the system by the mechanical filter, the water passes the liquid reservoirs and directly goes to supply all of our oil wells. The produced oil then gets sucked up by the other pipe, except for this one. Why is that the case? Because we don't have any power. Okay, let's fix that. After a while a duplicant came over and fixed it. Now we have power and oil should get sucked up. The second oil well here also isn't filled up properly to work, which means that we are not sending over enough crude oil for a full 10 kilograms per second, which means that the last few tiles of the petroleum boiler could overheat. I jump started the process by filling up this room with a little bit more crude oil. Now the pump activates and hopefully fills up our crude oil pipe to maximum, which at the moment pretty much seems like it. I still can see some pipes that aren't full, but let's hope those are just remnants. Oh yeah, and as you can see, I fixed the pipes that broke in the last episode by fine-tuning the heat input and replacing the broken pipes. Since the petroleum is now flowing and the petroleum generator is producing energy, we hopefully no longer need our steam turbine setup. So I changed the settings for the battery that controls all of the steam turbines in a way that the steam turbines are not prioritized anymore and only activate if the petroleum generators are not producing enough energy. The heat for both systems still originates from our solidified magma. I removed the surrounding airflow tiles for better access. By the way, there is no reason to stop this system because you're not wasting resources and you probably do want to have that excess produced water. All of this piping scrambled with my brain, so I'm sending over large amounts of glass so we can focus on decor on the second planetoid. The glass is being transported over and dropped here, where it is accessible for the duplicants to build stuff with. In our case, a lot of storage bins and hanging pots, which will allow us to get rid of our old storage system underneath the living area. And now to the main problem that screwed with the whole thing. At times the polluted water is over 100 degrees Celsius, which means as soon as it is sieved and turned into regular water, it will flash into gas, destroying the pipe piece and damaging the sieve, which in itself stops the water flow, leading to less crude oil, leading to less petroleum, burning the generators. Luckily this hasn't happened yet, so this burnt generator was just a leftover one made from gold amalgam and not steel. The issue of the output polluted water being too hot originates in the temperature of the output petroleum, because the petroleum goes into the petroleum generator and the polluted water is then dumped at around the temperature that the petroleum generators have at the moment, which in our case is almost the same as the incoming petroleum, whereas the temperature of the petroleum is controlled by the temperature of the incoming crude oil. Sadly, this heat exchange doesn't work perfectly. There's almost a 30 degrees Celsius difference, which is why I tried expanding the length of our heat exchanging snake piping. The results of that being that we now only have a difference of around 17 degrees Celsius, which in hindsight was only temporary. I then tried this, which made the heat difference worse again. Heck, I even went totally overboard and tried this. But in the end, the heat difference was always around 28 degrees Celsius, no matter what I tried. So I finally threw in the towel and ghetto solutioned it. First with a few radiant pipes exposed to the atmosphere, which worked fine for a while. And then I just used a buttload of radiant lead tiles submerged in liquid, which hopefully helps keeping the thing running for a while. Back on the second planetoid, we can finally start with other systems. First, I want to connect up another oil well to the pool of already existing ones. You never know when you might need it. Then more solar power, because in all this time we have accumulated more glass, which still hasn't been used up even though we used it for all of these hanging pots. Meanwhile, all of this work made the duplicants not as happy as you might expect. We got a few pukers here. May also have to do with the fact that the dupes are no longer eating barbecue and don't have a recreational room. At least not a proper one. So why don't we fix that right now? A jukebox and decor bombing with the statues and a lot of pixel packs can help tremendously. There we go, now all that is missing should be power. But just to be sure that everyone is happy, David and Skycloud will get skill scrubbed. And in addition to that, no matter how shameful it might be to admit, I'm not very far in some aspects of the research tree. So no matter how good some temporary solutions are, sometimes it is good to have a proper functioning setup. And that is what I'm trying to achieve here, a proper radiation research setup. But of course, by exploiting the natural tile creation system. I should have closed the doors here, then this would have worked. Okay, let's tile this in and try again. First close the door to the right and then deconstruct the door left to it. Hopefully now we will get a natural tile. Nice. Now we need to tile in the left side of this door and then we can deconstruct this as well. I jumped a little bit ahead here and I think you know where I'm going with this. I will catch one of our pips, drop it here, tile in the background, drop some wheat seeds, fill in a little bit of gas for them to breathe and change those pneumatic doors with manual airlocks. Well, apparently I am still too dumb for this. Of course the red bolts that we are collecting in the middle of the wheat wards need to be shot to the left, so we can't just have a manual airlock there. This drop of water should keep our gases in line, but still let the red bolts through. But the pip will probably escape. Meanwhile, on the second planet we finally got a Meep. Which is amazing because we can finally welcome our lovely patron Meepo Ninthbit to the base. And if a Meep doesn't fit that name, I don't know. So hello and welcome to the base. Did someone just die? No, seriously. Okay, here we are back again. Do you know how often I had to reload the game to get another Meep? This took forever. Hey, so while past me is typing in the name, I can explain to you this exploit. When your supply teleporter is shining and you have a blueprint in the pipeline, you can save the game and reload the game to get a completely new selection of duplicants and supplies. That is the way I got another Meep. Meepo will start with improved carrying and will of course get their own bedroom. For now Meepo, this is your bedroom. Maybe even someone comes by and takes care of the statues. Hey, if I'm getting printed somewhere, I want that service too. Meepo's first day in existence ends with a shower and a little bit of sleep. After removing our old oxygen system, I might have neglected building a new one. So I could use the excess water that we are producing in our first system to power a tiny electrolyzer setup. One electrolyzer can supply up to 8.8 duplicants if run continuously. With the setup I have in mind right here, we can supply around 5 duplicants. All we need is an electrolyzer, 2 pumps and a mechanical filter. The pumps can transport exactly one full pipe of either oxygen or hydrogen, but most of the time it is a mixture that is not full. Hence, we can't supply 8 duplicants, but only 5. The mechanical filter can either filter out the hydrogen or the oxygen, depending on how you prime it. For this setup, it is really important that neither the oxygen pipe nor the hydrogen pipe backs up, which is why I'm using high pressure gas vents as an overflow protection. Normally the system doesn't need any cooling, just like any other SPOM system, but the surrounding areas here are really hot, so I'm not sure if we might need to add that later. The power, as you can see, comes from below, and I'm going to set the priority to super high so that our duplicants don't suffocate, which is something that I have said way too often in this Let's Play. After we have finished this, I primed the loop with oxygen, meaning everything that is oxygen goes to the right and everything else goes to the left. Now the room gets vacuumed out from any gases that aren't oxygen or hydrogen, while the water is coming from the right, but I think I need to fix up some piping here, as well as maybe add another buffer, meaning a liquid reservoir, just for this electrolyzer setup. After the room is emptied out from every wrong gas, we can hook up a hydrogen generator to the left hydrogen output pipe. A little bit like this. I'm not sure if this is a proper functioning SPOM, even though I disconnected it from the main grid, but its power consumption is that of 2 almost constantly running gas pumps. The automation for this is just a single automation cable hooked up to the battery, set to 90 and 70. Hey, and while we are here, we still have this unused steam geyser. Water is water, so why not use it? The idea is to cool the output steam down, that it liquefies and drops down, where it accumulates in our reservoir, gets chilled to the right temperature, and then transported to wherever we might need it. Oh yeah, and while this was happening, we got one of those again. Adrian apparently wanted to get trapped, so as a quick solution, I just dug through the oil biome to the left, with the hopes of rescuing them quickly. Which worked so perfectly fine that I don't even have any recordings of it stupid past me. And as you see in the background, I sadly had to leave the gas pump in the steam room. I hope looking at this will not drive me crazy in the long run. Also, our power is fluctuating at the moment. The reason for that is that our natural gas reserves have been used up, even though the geyser is still erupting. Which means it might be time to suck up the natural gas produced by our oil wells. I'm using a pump hooked up to an atmos sensor set to a certain amount of pressure, feed the gas through a mechanical filter to filter out any gas that we don't want, and then feed the natural gas to our already existing system, to which I added 2 more natural gas generators. So today we created 10 kilowatts of power, originating from crude oil cooked in our petroleum boiler, which grew bigger and bigger the longer I played. The petroleum that is being used for the generators and turned into energy will lead to the generator producing polluted water, which is sent to the second planetoid, where it is first cooled down a little bit, so it is under 100 degrees Celsius, then mixed with fresh incoming water from the Halo exploit, filtered through 2 sieves, and then either stored or used in the oil wells. Here you can see our new tiny SPOM setup. Underneath it is the liquid storage, and underneath that is the crude oil storage. To the left we have the cold steam vent Tamer that is still in the process of getting started. Above that we have our natural gas system. To the left, natural gas producing oil wells, as well as the corresponding mechanical filter. The old magma powered steam turbine setup, which hopefully now is obsolete with our new petroleum generator setup, which is more powerful and effective. We got this nice, slightly overheated radiation study terminal setup. We beautified the infinite storages, and if you were wondering where those giant amounts of glass were coming from, this here is our glass forge, which dumps the hot glass into a pool made from ice temp shift plates. On Wade's planet, right under this armada of food collecting sweepies, we created a very uniform storage bin area, only interrupted by this oil well. Speaking of interruption, today's shoutout goes to BierTier, the German engineer, who makes very pleasant Let's Play videos and is all in all a great guy. And he also helped me with my PC setup, so go and check out his channel. If you're still here, please leave a like for the algorithm. Thank you all for watching, love you guys, and here, check out this video.